I think we should be recording. But yeah, today we're going to basically be looking at a sector analysis rather than the usual stock analysis videos that I do. And just a quick, I guess, disclaimer or to flag, this isn't actually, of course, an exhaustive list of the video game sector. I'm pretty sure there's going to be other companies who either publish or develop video games who aren't in this list. But rather, it's just a list of all the companies that I follow who are in some way or another tied to video games. So, like for instance, GameStop don't actually develop or publish any video games, as far as I know, but they clearly sell it. So I like to just track the stock as well within this document. And I guess this video, alongside being an analysis of the video game sector, is going to kind of also be a how-to or kind of walkthrough of how I personally follow sectors and keep up with them in terms of the data that I like to look at and how I also obtain that data. And as you can see here, it's kind of something that I do for most sectors that I like to keep a close eye on. So for instance, within the retail apparel sector, I also then have this exact same setup where again I like to look at specific key performance indicators and key metrics tied to that specific industry. I think a good example actually would be the energy sector. So if I get that one up, within this one, as you can see, I like to specifically look at with like the oil and gas reserves and the enterprise value to the barrel equivalents. So kind of breaking down this sector then, so obviously the first column, or the first few columns are pretty generic, but the first one is just basically long or short. So I like to basically note down if I'm long or short of the stock currently. So as you can see here, with Corsair is the only company at the moment that I'm currently long. I bought the stock actually when it dipped quite badly with the whole tariff situation. I believe when it was around like $5-6, so it's already nearly doubled now. So I still hold a few shares, but I have, to be fair, trimmed about half of it off as well now. And then other than that, pretty much no other positions. So base just means I'm neutral in every other stock. I might have a short or long bias, but that's basically where my investing trading book comes in, where in terms I'm like if I actually am long or short bias, and then my positioning or what to do comes into that document. So I can make a separate video on that if you guys want that. So with the name column, it looks kind of pretty standard, like the full name and then the ticker. But what's really good about this, and specifically why I use Excel to keep track of sectors as a whole, is due to the data function in Excel. So it's basically like a really powerful tool. So as you can see here, the stock section here, pretty sure you can see it, yep. Essentially what it allows you to do is have a drop down then of loads of different up-to-date data fields on that specific company, and then Excel kind of continuously pulls the most up-to-date relevant data for that specific data field. So for instance, I can show you like here. So if I was to do, I don't know, like a generic one, Apple, so you can do the Apple ticker. And then if you just click the stocks button here, you can then select obviously the company you want. We want Apple, and then you get the drop down, and then now you can, if I put it in this cell here, you'll be able to see it. I'll get the latest up-to-date stock price for Apple. I think it's like a 15-minute delay, but it's really good. And when you're trying to like track a sector and you're not like day trading or minute by minute, quantitative trading, it's more than fine to have a 15-minute delay on stuff like data like this. But yeah, I can make a whole tutorial again on that. I'm pretty sure it comes standard, but if it doesn't, then yeah, again, I can look into it for you guys and show you how to get the data type here. But I'm pretty sure it's pre-installed. Cool. With column C, then we just have the links, and all this basically is then the Pacific sector, is the Pacific stock analysis on that company. So for instance, with Corsair, I just click the link here. It's a hyperlink, and it goes into the analysis that I've done on Corsair. And then we basically have the majority of the data input. So essentially, these highlighted section here is pretty much data that I either input or grab again from the data types. Actually, to be fair, I think the only thing that I grab from the data type here is the beta, and that's just to see the sensitivity of the stock relative to the market. So quite clearly and easily I can see that all these companies as a whole have a roughly 0.8 beta, so they're basically slightly less volatile than the market as a whole. And then quite simply, I can easily see, so Unity stock, for instance, is very, very volatile relative to the market versus, say, a Digital Bros or I don't know, better example maybe is like a Sega, which again makes sense, right? Because Sega is a much more established, bigger company, whereas Unity is a slightly more niche company. So that just gives me a quick, nice overview then of the sensitivity and the volatility of a stock. The earnings call, again, is kind of self-explanatory. It's just basically when the next earnings call is, and I've deliberately left a few like this just so I can show you this setup and the process of how I continuously update this document. And so essentially what I've set up here is a quick formula just saying today. So then this cell here will always have today's date. So today is the 30th of June. And then I have a quick conditional formatting rule where if this value or any of the cells in here are lower or basically before this date, it then means that then the data that I have for the rest of the row is out of date and essentially needs updating. So this is how I'm able to quickly flag and keep on top of anything that I need to update, because again it's quite a manual process with the rest of the data that I do. And so this just basically is a nice quick easy way to keep up to date and know when I need to update anything within this document. Cool. So then I think next what we'll do is then kind of by explaining the process, how I update the row, you'll then kind of see what the figures are coming, where the figures are coming from, and then how it feeds into the main bit of the analysis here, which you can clearly see is all color coded and stuff. So the tool I use then, or the website I use, is investing.com, and I basically have the Pro Model Edition. To be honest with you, you can literally use anything for this, as long as you're able to get pretty basic standard data. You can use any free tool out there. So yeah, usually I don't have it set up like this. Usually I'll have this Windows in obviously my other monitor, but obviously I want to show you guys how I do it, and I'm only recording the one monitor. Do go onto the historic data. So the TTM just means trading 12 month. So for this column, these columns, actually if I zoom out a bit, you can maybe see a bit more. But yeah, this column, these columns, and this, essentially all I get is from the historical financials. So again, anywhere we'll have it for free. It's very easy to get. But we have the revenue, so I will then update that, as you can see here with the latest trading 12 months. The latest quarter, we can see that the past 12 months from the latest quarter, the revenue is now 3.674. So kind of go down. You can see it's kind of gone down. And one thing I like about this process, about it being manual actually, is I'm pretty sure there's a way I could like scrape the data and with a Python script. But the reason I also like having a bit of manual, a bit of a manual aspect to it, I like the mental, I guess, process also of like realizing, okay, cool, I've just noted down that GameStop's trading 12-month revenue has gone down. Whereas if I was to scrape that data and automate the whole thing, it's a bit harder to keep on track of and on top of everything. Whereas with this being manual, I'm specifically doing it, so I'm mentally making a note every time I input a new piece of data, what's actually happening to that specific company, or like for future use. I know that GameStop's revenue is trending down specifically because I did this input. So again, we skip the forward because we'll get onto that in a bit. TTM for net profit, we can see is 208. So again, keeping a mental note of that. Revenue slightly dipped, but then net profit has significantly increased. So that kind of aligns with GameStop's current narrative, is where they're kind of, the top line is kind of decreasing and the business overall is kind of becoming smaller, but with their new management, they're becoming more profitable and they're focusing on I guess they're focusing on profitability, and we can clearly see that happening in action. So then next we have the free cash flow. So again, you can see free cash flow has massively shot up 4x. So again, a good mental note to keep on track of. EPS we'll get onto, and then finally we have the two balance sheet items. And the reason we have this is again to see the cash debt position of a company, but also then when we do the enterprise value of a company, and that analysis then allows us to keep on track of that. Cool. So we can clearly see cash has gone up significantly, and debt has actually significantly also gone up. So again, cool mental note to keep on track of. And then next of all, we go on to the earnings section, and here we have the EPS figures. So the EPS F1 is essentially just the average forward estimate. And so investingpro.com, they essentially use what you'd see like Yahoo Finance, for instance, which is basically a bunch of analysts. It aggregates all their what they have and what they essentially believe the forward EPS is going to be, and then they aggregate that and then basically an average. So you can see the low here is 0.7, 0.75. So it's a nice spread, to be fair. So I'm pretty confident with the 0.72 figure. And then the EPS F0, again, you can kind of do it either way you want. I just like doing it from this section where I get it from each quarter. And with this one, it's not a trading 12-month, so basically nothing will change. I just basically, all I want is the 4 quarters within the past financial year. Cool. And then lastly, we just have the forward revenue figure. So that's just simply on this toggle here, get that. And now it's about 3.518. So pretty much in line with what we had anyway. And then finally we can just update that now, so we know that we've updated it. And now I've updated that. You can see the highlight has obviously with the conditional formatting disappeared, and so now I know that row is now up to date. And so that's basically how I then do the data input. We can then move on to the rest of the columns. And yeah, this is what I would say is the actual analysis part of the document. And one thing I like to do is use a lot of color coding, color blocks, because then from a quick, like, I guess, bird's eye view, you can instantly see the kind of the performance and the desirability of a stock from a long or a short position. So for instance, if a stock has like complete red, you know, it's not necessarily a short, but it's something you might look into and think, okay, why is that? With Take-Two is quite explanatory. It's because that the market's pricing in GTA 6. So again, you wouldn't actually short the stock here. It's just that yeah, there's always an answer. So like, you got to remember this document here is just the quantitative aspect of the analysis when analyzing a stock. That's why we do an actual stock analysis. We don't just trade off of this document. I think that's one thing I should have flagged at the beginning actually is I don't trade off this document. So for instance, if a company had like a sea of green, obviously gold is a bad example, but if it had like all 5 green, like all green here, I wouldn't just buy the stock based off that. All it does is kind of narrows it down, or kind of flags to me, or maybe I should look at the stock. So for instance, if I did see Take-Two have all a sea of red, I wouldn't just short it. I'd then look into it, and then once I looked into it, I'd then obviously, if I wasn't aware of GTA 6, I would have been made aware of GTA 6, and it would have very much explained why, you know, the company has such high valuation multiples relative to the performance. That being said, it's also then quite useful, for instance, that, okay, cool, I know GTA 6 is going to come out. Maybe I want to go long, but then now with this document and this analysis, I can clearly see it's been priced in. So there's not really much, in my opinion, much upside to buy and Take-Two stock. So that also then kind of brings me on to then how this all works. So it's quite simple, but we have this row here, which is the sector averages. As you can see here, very simple average formula for each column. And then again, all we do is conditional formatting. So again, I'll highlight these, go to the rules. And so then for the valuation multiples, we have it as green. So if the valuation multiple is lower than the sector average, then we give it a green color. And then obviously if it's above the sector average, we give it a red. So that works for those two. And one thing also to flag is as well with the PE, and I should actually do it with this one, I just realized, but with both actually, what I like to do is, if when you see the zeros, it's not actually a zero, it's just normally that it's a negative, but obviously it's a bit dumb to have like negative PE ratios in my opinion. So when that happens, all I do is just denote it as 0. So as you can see with companies like Ubisoft and Don't Nod, they're loss making, so they obviously won't have an actual PE ratio. And then we have the performance metrics I like to look at. So to be fair, with the video game stock sector analysis document here is quite basic. There's not many, I guess, specific metrics that I look at for the sector. And also given the fact that there's companies within different sectors completely, like GameStop versus a Corsair versus a, you know, Square Enix. It's quite, in this instance, I think it's good to kind of keep it basic. So the basic ones obviously is top line, bottom line, so revenue, earnings, and specifically looking at the growth year over year. The reason I look at F1 only and not the what's happened is because obviously with the stock market and with trading, you know, everything is forward looking. We don't trade off past information. We trade off what we expect is going to happen, right? But I like to have a net profit column here, just again to see the profitability of the company at the moment, right? So for instance, with Remedy, you know, that might initially look really good with the earnings growth and then the revenue growth, but then when you dig in a bit more, they're actually a loss-making company, and that the EPS figures kind of skewed by the fact it's so minimal. So for instance, you know, a 0.25 to a 0.4 from an absolute basis is actually a very small increase. but from a relative basis, obviously on a percentage basis, it's very high. So that covers the sector analysis portion. I'll let you guys, you can pause it if you want and kind of see any specific companies you might want to look into. The remaining columns then are pretty, again, self-explanatory and basic. I don't spend too much time looking at this, and it's all pulled through via, again, the data type stock section. So it's the latest price, 52-week low, 52-week high. And the reason I like this information is just to kind of have a quick glance and see in terms of how the stock is performing on a technical analysis basis. So for instance, if it's near a resistance level or if it's potentially a near support level, kind of indicates that at a quick glance. So for instance, I can see here instantly ROBLOX is near 52-week high. So obviously the stock is performing very well, given the fact that its 52-week low is nearly 3x lower. And it also then allows me to see how a sector is performing overall. So for instance, if the majority of these stocks, the stock price is near their 52-week high, then I know the sector, or maybe even the market in general, is performing very well, which again we already know, where at the recording of this video, the S&P being around 6,000. But again, a couple of things to flag. Maybe like Paradox here is nowhere near its 52-week high, so that's quite interesting. Maybe something we might want to look into in terms of will it have a bounce back or maybe a potential short. You can see a very, very high forward PE, but then strong revenue growth, which is backed by then them giving a premium for their revenue in terms of the valuation multiple. So to be fair, from a quick glance here, it looks pretty fair, given the fact that it has a slightly lower sector average forward PE, which makes sense given the fact that it has a declining earnings growth forecasted for the upcoming year. And then finally, I like having some comments here sometimes, just if I want to flag anything when I look into a company. So for instance, like Embracer Group had Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 come out, which is quite big. So it's just comments I'd like to keep to myself, just to, again, if I need to remind myself of anything going forward. Alright, just quickly, I was just literally editing the video, and then I noticed that I didn't cover the second tab in the sector overview worksheet that I have. Essentially what the second tab does, which is actually quite specific to the video game sector, is I essentially have like a running list of all the upcoming video game releases, just so I can then keep on track of any potential upcoming catalysts. I think to be fair, it's kind of outdated, or not been updated for a while. So as you can see here, I haven't updated it since between either 20th and 30th of May. We're now at the end of June, so I've been quite bad in terms of updating it. But yeah, this is something that I usually like keeping track of, just for any upcoming potential catalysts in the sector. So for instance, when like in the Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance came out, was really good. Monster Hunter Wilds was really good for Capcom, and the stock price shot up as well. So stuff like that I think is really useful as well. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Video's gone on very long. If you have any questions about this analysis or any specific company you might want me to look at within this sector, just drop it down in the comments and I'll try to get around to it. But other than that, yeah, I think I'll leave the video there.